How to make people feel small without being reveres a sophisticated art. To diminishing someone's confidence and status without ever crossing the line into obvious rudeness or aggression. While crude people resort to insults that make them look bad, masters of psychological influence know how to make others feel insignificant through subtle techniques that appear polite while systematically undermining their target's sense of importance. Today, we're going to explore the psychology behind making people feel small through sophisticated methods. Why subtlety is more effective than direct confrontation, and how to use these techniques for protection while maintaining your reputation. The psychology of subtle diminishment, making someone feel small without obvious rudeness, works because it exploits the gap between what's being said and what's being communicated. The surface level appears respectful while the subtext delivers the psychological blow. This technique is particularly powerful because it allows you to maintain plausible deniability while achieving your objective. If someone complains about your behavior, you can point to your polite words, making them appear to be the problem. The effectiveness comes from the target's inability to defend against attacks. They cannot clearly identify. They feel diminished but cannot explain exactly how or why, which amplifies their sense of powerlessness. This creates cognitive dissonance, where their emotional experience contradicts the apparent reality of the interaction, leaving them confused and questioning their own perceptions. Strategic compliments. That diminishing of the most effective techniques is offering compliments that contain subtle insults or limitations. These backhanded compliments appear supportive while actually highlighting weaknesses. Examples include, "You're so brave for trying something like that," which implies they're likely to fail. Or, "That's actually pretty good for someone your age," which diminishes their achievement by suggesting it's only impressive given their limitations. The key is delivery that sounds genuinely positive, while the content subtly undermines their confidence. The target often thanks you for the compliment while feeling vaguely uncomfortable about it later. This technique is effective because it's difficult to object to apparent praise without seeming ungrateful or overly suspicious. Questioning their expertise in a powerful method involves asking seemingly innocent questions that expose gaps in someone's knowledge or challenge their competence in areas they consider their strengths. This might involve asking for clarification on basic concepts in their field or wondering aloud about alternative approaches they didn't consider. The questions must be framed as genuine curiosity rather than obvious challenges. "I'm probably missing something, but why did you choose that approach instead of the more standard method?" appears humble while actually questioning their judgment. This technique works because it forces them to justify themselves, while implying that their choices might be questionable. Damning with faint praise involves acknowledging someone's efforts in ways that minimize their significance or suggest they're not particularly impressive compared to higher standards. "That's a decent effort," or "You did okay considering the circumstances," acknowledges their work, while clearly indicating it falls short of excellence. The praise must be genuine enough to avoid obvious insult, while being insufficient to provide real validation. This creates frustration because they cannot object to praise while feeling unsatisfied. This technique is particularly effective with people who seek validation, because it gives them just enough recognition to make complaints seem unreasonable. Professional applications in workplace settings. These techniques can be used to manage difficult colleagues who are trying to undermine your position. Subtle diminishment can neutralize their influence without creating obvious conflict. During meetings, asking pointed questions about their proposals or gently highlighting overlooked considerations can reduce their credibility while appearing constructive. "I love your enthusiasm for this project" suggests their passion might exceed their competence. While that's an interesting perspective, implies it's unusual rather than valuable. The professional application requires careful calibration to avoid creating documented hostile behavior while still achieving your protective objectives. Social dynamics and status quo in social situations. Making someone feel small can be necessary when dealing with individuals who are trying to dominate groups or diminish others through their behavior. This might involve redirecting attention away from their stories, asking questions that reveal inconsistencies in their claims, or offering perspective that puts their accomplishments in less impressive contexts. That reminds me of when I did something similar in college. Diminishes the uniqueness of their experience. While that must have been quite an adventure for you, suggests it's more significant to them than to others. The goal is reducing their social dominance without appearing jealous or obviously hostile to other group members. Reading the target's vulnerabilities. Of subtle diminishment requires understanding your target's specific insecurities and pressure points. Everyone has areas where they're particularly sensitive to questions about their competence. Insecure achievers are vulnerable to suggestions that their success might be due to luck rather than skill. Social climbers can be diminished through implications that their status isn't as solid as they believe. People pleasers can be made uncomfortable through questions about whether they're being too accommodating, while control-oriented individuals can be subtly challenged about their decision-making processes. The key is identifying what they most want to be seen as and gently questioning whether that perception is accurate. Maintaining plausible deniability. Most important aspect of making people feel small without being rude is maintaining the ability to deny any hostile intent if confronted about your behavior. Your words and tone must be defensible as reasonable or merely curious. If someone challenges your motives, this requires careful word choice and genuine-sounding delivery. If accused of being condescending, you can express surprise about the misunderstanding while reaffirming your positive intentions. This plausible deniability protects your reputation while making the target appear oversensitive. If they complain about your behavior, timing and context considerations. Effectiveness of these techniques depends heavily on timing and social context. They work best when the target is already feeling uncertain, or when their competence is relevant to the current situation. Using these methods when someone is already struggling can appear obviously cruel, while using them when someone is being arrogant appears more justified. The presence of witnesses can amplify the effect because the target feels diminished publicly. But it also increases the risk if your techniques are too obvious. Recognizing when others use these techniques and understand these methods helps you Recognize when others are trying to make you feel small through similar approaches. Common signs include compliments that don't feel quite right, and questions that seem designed to expose your limitations. When you recognize these techniques being used against you, you can choose not to internalize the implied criticism and instead view it as information about the other person's intentions. Responding with confidence and refusing to be diminished often causes these techniques to backfire on those using them. Ethical boundaries and applications. These techniques should be reserved for situations where you need protection from genuinely problematic individuals rather than used casually against people who simply compete with you. The goal should be neutralizing harmful behavior or protecting yourself from manipulation, rather than randomly damaging people's confidence for personal satisfaction. Consider whether the potential damage to the relationship is justified by your protective needs. The ultimate subtle influence master the art of making people feel small without rudeness, and you'll possess a powerful tool for managing difficult individuals while maintaining your own reputation and relationships. This sophisticated approach allows you to protect yourself from toxic behavior and neutralize threats without the relationship damage that comes from obvious confrontation. When deployed strategically and ethically, these techniques become valuable tools for maintaining your status and protecting your interests in complex social environments where direct confrontation would be counterproductive.